On the heels of Luke Rockhold talking about, wanting to come back, there is an interesting question there of what would that look like? Luke would certainly be welcome back. He'd be welcome back right into a big spot on the card, whether that was a co-main event or a main event or, main card. But what would that look like if Luke came back? The first thing you would have to identify, which would just be simply by asking Luke, is what weight class are you coming back at? And I think that he would probably say 185 pounds. That is purely a guess, but I make that guess because the Luke Rockhold experiment happened at the exact same time as the Chris Weidman experiment of moving up to 205 pounds. Luke hasn't been back. Weidman is returning. Weidman's sliding back to 185. I'm not sure a great answer, just to have some fun and just to bring some closure to Weidman and Rockhold. Do a little bit of what Conor did with Cowboy. Go do that fight. Do it at 205 so everybody's a little bit more comfortable. It's not going to affect the rankings heavily either way, no matter what weight class you do it, which is the only reason I suggest that. Just make it a little easier on these veterans. Show them a little bit of a reward. They're both going to get in the ring at the same weight class anyway, so let them weigh in at 205 pounds. But I've always thought that match needed to be redone. That Weidman-Luke Rockhold match, if you guys ever go back and watch, that was one of the damn best matches. I mean, that should have been a contender for Fight of the Year. And for some reason, when they swept up the building that night, took the cameras down and tore that cage down and drove it to the next city, that fight was just a distant memory. And that is not my memory of that night. First off, Rockhold was an underdog coming in, just to remind you. And it was a great back and forth battle. But Rockhold's grappling was much stronger than Weidman expected it to be. Now, that's Weidman's own words. He said, look, man, that guy on the ground, he deserves a lot of credit there. And Weidman used a lot of energy early on trying to get Luke there. So it was one of these surprises. And the story of the fight was Weidman went for like a spinning wheel kick where he's on his feet and he spins around to like do this hook kick. And Rockhold grabs his back, tackles him, and Weidman was never to get up. That was the story of the fight, but I think that would be a misinterpreted story of the fight. I think that Weidman was very honest with us when he said, man, my battery was running low. That dude took a lot out of me in the first 2 rounds because of the grappling exchanges. If I could go back, this was my interpretation. Weidman didn't finish the thought. I interpret that for Weidman to say, if I could go back, I would pick some of those exchanges a little better. I would test the waters on my feet a little bit more. I would have trained differently and made sure I had that specific kind of cardio. That was my interpretation. But the wheel kick was largely Chris is Hail Mary knowing, look, I don't have much energy left. There's something called a wheel kick. I practiced it a couple times. If I land it, maybe the fight can be over. It was a Hail Mary. But in so many ways, that fight was so good. We got so many great minutes of it. Don't forget, the ending of that fight was around the 20-minute mark. And I'd have to go back and look, but I know it was in the 4th round. So let's say you go do that fight. It's not likely to be a main event. Now you're talking about a 3-round contest. I mean, it just changes the dynamics of what is already proven to be a great fight. So many people want to see that. Those guys have talked about redoing it. I'm only offering you 2 suggestions. First off, we do it for 15 minutes. Second off, we do it at 205. One guy's opinion, but that's mine.